Cha-cha.
Trains have regularly scheduled stops. The reason for that is, because people plan to get off the trains when they stop. And that's how generally people do it. They don't throw each other off trains. That's the purpose of having stops.
I'm going to throw it to the stormtrooper on my desk. That's what I got. Well, actually, it's Captain Phasma. Yeah, but it's like that's not really going to help that much. Tom Merritt's here with us, everybody. Tom Merritt, a host of what is wrong with me? Okay, because then you...
I do not host a show called What Is Wrong With Me.
No, that's true. You should, though. Actually, you can't, though, now, because that's going to be my show, because I'm going to launch that as soon as we're done here. I got to say really quickly, and again, he's not on the show today, but a couple of days ago, I mentioned a guy that I think people should check out on the YouTube. Alistair Beckett King is the guy's name. Alistair Beckett King. I don't know if he writes this stuff himself. I don't know if he produces the stuff himself. I don't know anything about the guy except I think he's hilarious. I don't even know where he came from, but there we go. Today, cord killers, cord cutters.
Cord killers. Yeah, you nailed it. Cord
Thank
killers.
You very much.
Yeah.
Well, I did the first time, and then I stopped the second time.
We don't just cut them; we kill them. Take that, cords.
Yeah, so it's a dangerous show, actually. I'll tell you something that's fun about the cord killing, the cord cutting, about getting all these different things that we can watch whenever we want to. Mm-hmm. I finally know how to say Darkseid's name. It's Darkseid.
Right.
You and I talked about this a while ago. I don't have time for the Zack Snyder cut. I just don't, because I feel like it's going to be 4 disappointing hours. And if you want to talk me out of that, that's fine. But the thing is, it has reawakened sort of an interest in me on the DC side. So since I have HBO, I now have access to all these DC cartoons. And so I've been watching a lot of really strange, really bad cartoons.
Have you watched Harley Quinn?
I have not watched Harley Quinn, although I did watch. I watched Birds of Prey, the movie, a couple of weeks ago, and that was good.
Yeah, I like that too. But Harley Quinn, the cartoon, is just twisted and weird and wonderful.
All right, I'll give that a try. You know what I've been watching actually was stuff because I am curious about Darkseid. And so not the ransomware people that we talked about earlier this week, but that bad guy, because it looks to me like what that was Jack Kirby saying to Marvel, you know what? Nuts to you. I'm going to do it again over here. And so he made Thanos, except that was Darkseid. But the thing is, was what, late 60s, early 70s when he did like the New Gods and things like that. So there's like lots of weird stuff there. Like the woman who, I say guy because it was voiced by Ed Asner in one of the cartoons, but like one of his like Sergeant at Arms people is Granny Goodness. And I don't even know how that's still being made as a thing. And then they have these computers that get them from place to place called, Mother Box, which I'm like, okay, Mother Box I can hang with. But how you get from place to place is Mother Box opens a boom tube, which is so like 1968 to 74 kind of lingo. If I can use the term lingo.
Lingo itself is a 1990s, 2000s.
There you go. So so here's what's really cool, though. Because I have HBO Max, I can just watch all that stuff whenever. I don't have to go to the video store and find it. I don't have to wait for it to come on one afternoon. I can just, the second I want to see that stuff, I see that. Now, I bring all of this up because I came across a fascinating Twitter thing earlier this week where somebody said anybody younger than Gen X or maybe the oldest of the millennials will never understand all the shows that we grew up with were not made for us, but we watched them because it's all there was, right? And I found myself thinking about, it's kind of neat that kids today can find that thing that they like. I hate to say kids today. Same thing with adults, too. I mean, it used to be, Saturday afternoon, what? There's golf. I don't care. There's basketball. I don't care. There's an old movie. I missed the beginning of it. Oh, what's this thing on PBS, right? One of the 10 or 12 channels that you had back when we were maybe in our early teens, up to maybe 50 by the time we were in our early 20s. Up to who knows how many now, so many that we've gotten rid of all that stuff so we can just watch what we want to watch. I'm not saying it's ruining the world, because I don't think it is. I'm just kind of fascinated by the idea that we've got so much stuff available to us now, and yet there is the possibility that we're actually bumping in to less stuff because we can go straight for the thing we want.
And whenever this comes up, and it comes up a lot as we get better access to things, I always bring up books, because none of us remember the time when books were like TV shows in the 70s. But there was a time when you read the books that you could get if you could read,
right?
Which is a whole different thing. But you couldn't just read any book. And as soon as the printing press came along, suddenly any book could be printed. And after a while, it got so efficient that, yeah, you might have to order it. You might have to wait a couple weeks for it to get shipped to you, maybe a couple months. But you could even go down to your library and access almost any book that you wanted. And yet we don't bemoan that, oh, there's no serendipity in books anymore. People can just read whatever they want. It's ruined books, because we have developed all kinds of different ways for how to select books and how to look for books and how to choose them. And I think we'll get there with TVs and movies. I think TV shows and movies. I think we will get to a situation where we approach TV shows and movies the way we approach books. There will be differences, because differences in the format and the reasons we watch them and what we get out of them. But I don't think we're going to really lose anything except a moment in time, which, as things change, you always lose that, right? And people, when television came along, people bemoaned that folks didn't sit around the radio using their imagination anymore to understand the stories, because they could just see it. And that is a loss, but I don't think anyone says we should get rid of TV because of that.
Yeah. There is something about the shared moment, though, as you say, and don't misunderstand. I'm not arguing against cord cutting or cord killing, for that matter. I haven't had cable. I don't even remember, man. 2010, maybe 2011. I haven't had cable just coming into the house, because there were too many days that I didn't do anything but watch Law and Order. It was literally Law and Order that got me wow, I'm done with cable, because there was a whole Saturday or maybe a whole Sunday, I can't remember which, where I was like, I'm just going to watch an episode. And then it might have been 6 or 7 hours later. And I was just like, yeah, okay, I'm calling them tomorrow. And then I did. And now I pay for almost as much. I pay almost as much as I was paying for cable, I should say, with all the stuff that I'm currently not watching. That's kind of a weird thing. I've got access to so much video stuff now, but I spend less time watching it than I would if I could just, flip on the TV and have something just, start yelling at me of its own volition.
Yeah, that's the other thing people complain about is like, oh, it's costing more than cable now to get all the shows. And it's like, well, there's a lot of reasons why that is, and a lot of reasons why this is still better. One of the things is you can decide if you don't want to have all the shows. Yeah. Whereas with cable, you paid for all the shows or you didn't. Yeah, there were a couple of digital tiers or whatever, but basically you paid for it all. You didn't get a whole lot of choice. So you've got control now. The other thing is, I think a lot of people, because still more than half of the U.S. has cable, they're looking at it as I pay for cable and I pay for Netflix and I pay for Hulu, because there are these shows that aren't on my cable. Yeah. And so that is an extra burden until we make a full transition. But also, I think people just kind of, I think they underestimate how much they were paying for cable, because they either remember the introductory price, not the price that they're paying after they forgot to call and try to keep the introductory price around. Right. Or it's just that thing where we like having one bill because it's simple, rather than a bunch of bills, which you get with Netflix. So we need to figure that out. We need to take down the cognitive load of how to, keep track of what you're subscribed to. But overall, I think we're just working through the awkward period.
Are you actually a cord killer, or do you have cable?
I have not had any kind of non-internet based television service since, I don't know, 2016, I think, is when I finally cut DirecTV. Okay. So I was DirecTV for decades. And then, I got rid of it. And we were on Sling TV for a while, then PlayStation Vue. Then PlayStation Vue went away, and I tried Hulu Live, but that didn't have all the channels that I want. So now I'm on AT&T TV over the internet, not through fiber. I'm on Spectrum for my internet, but I get AT&T TV over the internet because they have the Dodgers. And they're the only streaming service that has the Dodgers, and that is very important to my Dodger fan wife.
Well, wait a minute. What about MLB?
They block local teams.
You're kidding?
MLB. Yeah.
Oh, that's terrible. No, that makes sense, actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah, because the local regional networks are like, we don't want to lose the subscription revenue we get from people signing up through cable.
Yeah.
So we don't want to make our local. We'll make it available out of the market because we're not going to get any revenue off those people anyway. But yeah.
So what's funny to me is we can all watch whatever we want to, whenever we want to. And so Apple has made Apple Music TV, which is pretty much, what MTV used to be before, The Real World took it over and other shows like that. Cribs, I think that might have been one. I'm not sure. The Real Housewives of Rock and Roll may have been one, although I might be making that one up.
I want that to be true.
Interestingly, you actually said on Twitter the other day that your wife has created the MTV for movies, movie scenes, and this is something that's being done for IMDb. Is that correct?
It's actually for Roku.
Roku. Okay.
Yeah. So there's all these free services out there that show channels. Yeah. The way the way your old fashioned cable does.
Right.
So there's Pluto, which I think is the longest running and most famous.
Yep.
There's Zumo, which is owned by Comcast, and then Roku has their own, which is available on the Roku channel on a Roku TV or Roku device, but you can also just get it on iOS and Android and watch it on the web, and it's free, ad supported. So they have a bunch of channels from all different walks of life, from Viacom, CBS, and ABC, all the way down to little old Rotten Tomatoes, with the Rotten Tomatoes channel that my wife, like you said, she's the director of video production, and her team has created this channel, which is movie trailers, top 5 countdowns of best movie scenes, all kinds of fun stuff like that. There's a podcast called Rotten Tomatoes is Wrong, where they talk about whether movies have the right Rotten Tomatoes rating or not. So yeah, it's interesting. It's a really fun channel. I wanted to like it anyway because my wife's team made it, and she's responsible for it. But I found myself really getting sucked in because some of those shows, they're just showing you the fun clips of movies.
Right. It reminds me of, do you remember the Comedy Channel back in the day before Ha and Comedy Channel became Comedy Central?
Before they went Comedy Central. Yeah.
And it was basically, you would turn it on and it would be like, hey, here's a funny part from Private Benjamin.
Right.
Right. And then it'd be like, hey, here's some stand up by, I don't know, Jeff Regan, probably, or maybe even somebody older than that or further back in the day.
But it wouldn't be a full show because, you might get bored. So you'd see it for a little bit. Yeah.
It was MTV for comedy. Right.
Yeah.
And now she's doing the Comedy Channel for movies, or MTV for movies. And then Apple's doing MTV for MTV.
I think that is one of the values of this, split system that we're in is, yes, you have way too many choices, but also because there are so many choices, you can find a niche for something that couldn't find a niche on cable. The reason MTV became all Real World and stuff is that every cable TV channel had to grow its audience, which meant it had to broaden out, which meant it couldn't stay niche. That's why Sci-Fi put on wrestling. That's why MTV started reality shows. Whereas on these other services, you can measure success differently and stick with a niche audience, I think.